Hello and welcome to the October 17th Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority session on the grant cycle for cities and counties beginning October 2023. My name is Jennifer Nelson, Virginia Institute of Government, Assistant Director for Membership and Engagement. The Virginia Institute of Government is the leadership development and community engagement arm of the Weldon Cooper Center for Public Service at the University of Virginia. Through our research, leadership development programs, and local government engagement initiatives, we continue to work towards our vision of good governance, equity, and resilience in every Virginia community. VIG offers leadership development through SEI and LEAD, local government equity clinics, certification for treasurers and commissioners of the revenue, and customized training programs. State agencies and local governments can access a range of consultation and support services to build more resilient organizations. We have a team of seasoned public sector leaders and subject matter experts ready and available to facilitate boards of supervisors, city and town councils, leadership team strategic planning retreats, and other related events. Today, VIG is glad to partner with the Opioid Abatement Authority for this session. A few housekeeping notes. The session will be recorded and posted on the Weldon Cooper Center for Public Service YouTube channel soon. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat and I will ask them for you. Now I'm happy to turn things over to Charlie Linticum, the authority's Director of Operations. Charlie?
Thanks, Jennifer. And thanks as always to Virginia Institute for Government for being such a wonderful partner with the OAA and especially as we're kind of rounding the corner here on our first year of operation, and through everything that you've been doing with grants, webinars, and our abatement academy and all those things. We really appreciate all your support. It's made our jobs of getting information out to everyone much easier. So good morning, everyone. For those that maybe don't know me, I am Charlie Linticum. I am the Director of Operations for the Opioid Abatement Authority, and what that means is I oversee all of the grants processes, kind of soup to nuts, from developing forms and processes to leading the review of applications and getting stuff summarized to the grants committee and kind of everything in between. And I also oversee a lot of our outreach, especially to cities and counties for support. So this webinar today is specifically designed for new applicants. So if you are on and you have applied before, you can see some of the updates to our process that you may note from the last time, but everything is geared as if you have not applied to us before. So, and I will note there will be as I get through the different sections, I'll have some prompts in my slide deck to ask questions about that specific section. And there'll also be an opportunity for Q&A at the end. This work order will also be posted on the OAA's website, as will tomorrow's recording that is for people that have applied before and currently have awards for changes to the process and how to deal with amendments and renewals. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to do a real quick review of the funding distribution and definitions around that to make sure we're all familiar and have a reference point for the terminology we're talking about. I'm not going to do a big overview of the OAA. We have some videos on our website of that. There's a number of slide decks as well. There's a lot of information available on that. I'm going to look at the statutory requirements that guide the OAA work versus the settlement requirements that guide funds that cities and counties receive directly. Then we're going to look at the individual distribution. It's one of our grants for cities and counties. We're going to look at the framework. We're going to talk about some optional strategies around that individual distribution. And then we're going to take a look at the application, and I'll show you our grants portal where all the documents are located on our website. We'll also do things with cooperative projects. We'll talk about what those are. Those are multiple cities and counties working together. We'll talk about the framework and the application. And then I'll have a little additional information at the end. One note is, so we do say grants portal, but it's really just a website with links to Adobe PDF documents and Excel files to fill out. We hope by this time next year to have launched an actual full software solution that will house all your information that you need and allow you to apply for and manage your grants. We are working on trying to finalize some of the process for our RFP for that and hope to get to work on it soon. So, but for now, we're still doing PDFs and Excels and emailing those in. So we hope this is the last cycle for that. All right, so funding distribution. So this is what, when the Virginia, remember, we're all in this together. Every time we do a settlement, Virginia's participating in national settlements and is signing on, and Virginia is coming in, and thus far, for every settlement, all 133 cities and counties have signed on, so the whole state's participating together. So based on the memorandum of understanding that was negotiated with the Attorney General's office and all the localities, this is what happens. This big pie chart over here is what happens to funding when payments come out related to a settlement. So 15% of it goes directly to the Commonwealth, and it goes into a special fund that has to be used for opioid abatement and remediation. That's controlled through the governor's office and the General Assembly through the normal kind of budget and appropriation process. 30% comes directly to cities and counties. It does not come through the OAA. You do not have to apply to the OAA to use it. It is guided not by the OAA, but it's guided by each set of money. This is guided by each individual settlement document. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then 55% comes to the Opioid Abatement Authority. And then by statute, it's broken into these 4 categories you see in the squares on the right. Top section is 15% that is set aside for cities and counties. So now we'll note both this 15% here and this 30% here. The way that is distributed amongst cities and counties has a number of inputs, but primarily is done on what's called a measure of harm per capita that was developed by a professor at UVA. So it's not just a population-based distribution. So it takes into account things like overdoses and emergency room visits for that, and deaths related to opioids in that community per capita. So one of the best examples is, everybody knows Fairfax is the largest locality in Virginia. It's 13% of Virginia's population. They're only set to receive about 8% of the settlement, because their measure of harm per capita was below what their general population was. So both the way the money gets distributed of this 30% gets distributed, and the way we set aside this 15% here uses that same measure. And I will also note this 15% here, we look at that as it's by code, it has to be allocated to each city and county. So we look at that as that's your money. You have to apply to us to get it and tell us what you're going to do with it. And we're here to help you do that. It just has to meet the qualifications that are in the code, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. I liken ourselves to, like, we're not a barrier to or gatekeeping this money. We're just more like guardrails and speed bumps to make sure we're all traveling in the right direction. The next part, 35%, is set aside for city and county partnerships. That is 2 or more cities and or counties working together that are pulling. So this money up here is not competitive. Like I said, it's set aside for each city and county. This bit here is competitive. There's a limited amount that's available each year, and that we will be ranking applications versus other applications and whatnot. And I'll talk a little bit more about these 3 in a minute, but there's also 15% that's set aside for state agencies, and then 35% that's unrestricted. This allows the board to be creative and think about other ways to kind of push money in these different pots here. And you should note, the reason these 3 are also called out is the OAA can only provide grants to cities, counties, and state agencies. We cannot provide grants to hospitals. We cannot provide private hospitals. We cannot provide grants to nonprofits. We cannot provide grants to CSBs, school districts, towns, sheriff's offices. It has to be specifically a city, a county, or a state agency. Now, any of those other people I mentioned are welcome to be a partner, a subrecipient with one of those applicants, but the city, the county, the state agency has to be the applicant, the fiscal agent, and the owner of the process. So how do these things connect into our grant programs? So the first thing I'll note is this 30% that comes to you all directly, we call that the direct distribution. Comes from the settlement administrator directly to cities and counties, does not come through the OAA. You do not have to apply to the OAA to use it. And that is not a grant program of ours. But this one, we call that relates to the cities and counties, we call this the individual distribution. So that's the funds set aside specifically for distributions from the OAA to cities and counties. This is the one I mentioned, we're kind of like speed bump and guardrails. And then the city-county partnerships, we call cooperative partnerships. We did not want to say regional because I'm sure, as all of you are aware, every time somebody puts a region together for something in the state, it's different from every other region that exists. So we look at them as cooperative partnerships. Has to be 2 or more cities or counties or counties in the same, they do have to have 2 in the same DBHDS region. Once you pass that 2 in the same DBHDS region, I don't care what the rest of the makeup is, but you minimally have to have that. I'll talk more detail about these 3, but I wanted you to see them, and I wanted you to see them in context with this thing about, this is kind of the terminology that we're going to use. You're going to see these 3 terms like continue to come up. So what are our statutory requirements? So we obviously, the state has to comply with all, in the OAA, and the localities have to comply with the details of each individual settlement. And I will tell you, each settlement is probably 500 to 600 pages with only but so much detail about what you can and can't do. Lots of wording, not necessarily a lot of clarity. Over on top of that, for funding that comes from the OAA, the section of Code of Virginia that guides our financial distribution says that 100% of the monies that come that go to cities and counties and state agencies has to be spent on abatement efforts. So you can't take money from us to buy police cruisers, pay potholes, or pay off construction loans, anything like that. Has to be for abatement efforts. There is no reimbursement of previous cost or supplanting allowed with our funds. No indirect charges allowed. And recipients must report outcomes to the OAA on an annual basis and allow us to monitor the programs. So I'm going to to restate, the individual distribution and other awards from the OAA are guided that you have to apply to the OAA to receive the money. It has to be 100% used for abatement. No supplanting, indirect, or prior cost. You have to agree to our terms and conditions, and there's financial and performance reporting requirements. The direct distribution that's guided by the settlement, it's received directly. You do not have to apply the OAA to use it. Non-abatement use, things I talked about like paving potholes and buying police cruisers and things like that, are disfavored. What does disfavored mean? Those 600 pages do not define disfavored. And there are certain settlements that allow some non-abatement use and some that don't. Each one's a little bit different. The percentage is a little bit different. And just because you see the face of percentage doesn't mean there's not something else behind that may be already using part of that. It gets pretty messy. When you want to get into the details about compliance with each settlement, that's something I recommend you talk to your city or county attorney about. We don't have purview into that. They are the ones that helped get these things to settlement. So you're responsible to hear each settlement's requirements, and the reporting requirements vary depending on settlement.
Charlie, are we able to bounce in and ask questions periodically, or did you want us to
hey,
hold
Steve.
off? Hey, how are you, buddy?
If you've got something that applies to this section I'm in, then that'd be fine.
I do. So the reporting period from a performance measure standpoint. So if you let's say we applied as soon as the October 1 grant application period opened, and then we were funded in December, would that begin the annual reporting clock for that specific example? Like, how frequently do you have to report your performance information?
All of our awards for cities and counties for individual distributions and cooperative partnerships are on a fiscal year basis.
Okay.
So if you got something in the middle of FY24, in December, let's say, then your reporting would be due after the close of the fiscal year in June. So it'd be like September 1 of 2024.
Gotcha. Okay.
So reports are always, everything's going to run on the fiscal year. You may be able to get awards during the year or amendments during a fiscal year. But the performance period is still going to stay on the fiscal year, and the reporting is usually going to be due like right around September 1st, after the fiscal year has closed. So the reports can come in, and we can aggregate those before the new period opens up for anything that we need to take into context there.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, so we've talked about the statutory requirements and the kind of difference between the statutory requirements and the settlement requirements. So individual distributions to cities and counties. Then we'll talk about the framework of how these work. Application period opened October 1st and is open through April 1st of 2024. We plan for any subsequent application periods to run during this time frame each year. And I say around that time, you know, we set these dates out, not realizing that October 1st was a Saturday. So we will keep things probably trying back to the work week in the future years, but this is the approximate time frame that we're planning to run the application for period 4 going forward. We have set deadlines within the application period if you want something to be considered within it. So, and I should note, so this is primarily for your individual applications. Your cooperative applications where you're working with other cities and counties, because they're competitive, they're not going to be able to be considered until after the application period closes and we can see all of them together. But for your individual distribution, you can get that during the year. So if you want to hit the December 4th grants committee meeting, because all of the awards and amendments and renewals have to go through approval by our grants committee, which is a subset of our board, and that happens in a public meeting. Then you have the option of sending us a draft ahead of time. In theory, we would like to see that by October 23rd to give us time to review and get feedback to you all before we would need something due by November 3rd to give us time to review and work with you if any changes that need to be made and get recommendations written up into our grants committee before the meeting on December 4th. And then if something's approved on December 4th, then you'll get, you know, an award letter package, things that need to be done. And then we would work on trying to transmit funds as quickly as we could after that. Once all the the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and the boxes are checked, I think things have been able to get out within a week or two of when we receive all of that. Same thing for, we have another grants committee meeting during the period on February 23rd. Optional draft review due January 12th. Applications would be due January 26th to us to be considered at this meeting. And then ultimately, if you want us a draft review before the April 1st closing out deadline of the period, we'd need something by March 15th. And those, as well as all of the cooperative partnerships, both any new applications that are submitted now, as well as renewals and amendments from current awards, will be considered at this grants committee meeting on May 23rd. And this chart is also in the grants guidance for the individual distribution, which is one of the links on our grants portal I'll show you. So performance period for these, we kind of look at this as kind of a rolling 2 years, whereas right now, if you want to, you can request some money in the current fiscal year if you want to hit one of these 2 dates. And then you can also use this period to request the money for the upcoming fiscal year. And then going forward from that, you have the opportunity, once you've have an award, to amend your current year if you want to, and request the next year. So it just kind of keeps rolling. Again, we see this as kind of your money to use for abatement projects that we just have to have some oversight on in order to make the awards. So if you want to stand something up and then, you know, you want to spin that off, or it's not working the way you want to, and you want to sunset it and stand something else up, the process kind of is meant to be fungible for you all to do what you think is best for your community with your money. And we're here to help you with that any way that you need. Carryover, which often happens from your first year when you're starting new processes up. Carryover is automatic from FY24 to 25. It's kind of a no questions asked. From FY25 and after, you would need approval from the OAA, or you would need to repay it. Basically what we are thinking for approval would be, your carryover was planned, whatever it is, say it's like a procurement. The procurement didn't happen in time, or you have some money because you weren't able to hire a position in time and you want to use it in the next year for some one-time thing, that is within the scope of your project, and whatever is going on, you're still making reasonable progress to implement everything, and you're remaining in compliance with our terms and conditions. So most times we would expect that to be around one of those two examples I mentioned. So governing body responsibility. So I say this doesn't mean you need any action from the OAA doesn't require action from the board or the city council. We don't require resolutions. If you're familiar with our process that we set up earlier this year, we had that requirement. We removed that. It created more confusion than we intended and didn't really get at the heart of what we thought it would. So to simplify things, we've removed that requirement from everything. So the governing body still has, the authority to determine the use and the appropriations of funds, but is also, responsible for use by subrecipients or partner organizations. So when we make a grant to a city or county, we're talking to the city or county, no matter who they're using, you may be partnering with to execute the program and get it implemented and delivered. We're not talking to 5 people, we're talking to the one city or county. Have to agree to remain in compliance with our terms and conditions, have to measure performance, and then do the yearly reporting, both financial and performance that we talked about. How will we evaluate and make decisions? So the evaluation is primarily done is does the project that's submitted meet the statutory conditions and restrictions 2.22370 Code of Virginia, which we also call the OAA's gold standard. Does it comport with the settlement agreement's allowable uses, which we have a document on our website I'll show you, and our terms and conditions. The staff will receive the applications and kind of do a review. Whatever staff members assign to you will be your main point of contact and look for any points of questions or clarity or anything that might need to be changed. And then from that we'll make recommendations for approval or denial up to the grants committee. We are happy to work with you if things are not lining up in a way that we can we feel that we can approve it based on the requirements, to make amendments as you need to get there. So we didn't I think we only had one project that was received last year that we didn't recommend for approval. So applications that don't meet the requirements, like I said, we'll work with you to revise, or you can withdraw and submit again later. If we've come to a loggerhead and we've recommended for denial, you'll have the opportunity to appeal to the grants committee and kind of present your case in front of them. If the grants committee recommends a denial, then you may appeal to the board for a final decision. So the board would be the end. The board would be decision would be the final end of the process. So funding that is available. We have on our website a city and county lookup tool that I'll show you, and I'll show you where it is on our grants portal as well. It looks like this when you come it up. It's got 2 tabs here. I use Microsoft Edge, so when I bring it up, I have to download it to be able to use it. As you see, there's a drop down here that doesn't work here. I think if you bring it open in Chrome, it will work normally, but it is fine to download. So if you notice, we have 2 tabs. So this first one here, you just go and you can choose a city or county. Let me see. Steve, can I use Gloucester as an example?
Absolutely.
All right, so Gloucester County. So when you choose, it will populate these buckets here of funding that's available to each city and county. So this is your direct distribution. This is how much it's projected that you'll receive over the course of the settlements. including amounts you should have already received in 22, 23, and maybe some of in 24. And then here's how much is available through the OAA, with its individual distribution. If you've had an award that was approved this year, that will be reflected here, and then a balance available. And then here's how much through our gold standard incentive program, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but that's a way that you can increase the amount of money that's available here. So here's how much would be available for that. And if you move over to the other tab, you will be able to also choose your locality. Gloucester again. And then you'll see how much by each settlement. So we have 3 settlements that we've received payouts for thus far: distributors, Janssen and Mallinckrodt. So this is what's estimated to come over these. These come through the Attorney General's office, who's negotiating the settlements. You notice Mallinckrodt, I'll talk about Mallinckrodt in a few minutes. It's got its own kind of problems, but we've only received 1 payment and we don't have estimates the rest of the way out at this point. So you can choose your locality to see what that you got and what you have at your access to either apply for an individual distribution and or the gold standard, to use your direct distributions, or to combine those funds potentially and use them as matching dollars on a cooperative partnership project. So that sheet that I showed you right now includes the distributor settlement, which was McKesson, Cardinal Health, and Amerisource Virgin. They all negotiated together. So that's one. And then Janssen, which is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, or J&J, as you may know, and Mallinckrodt. And I've got little stars on Mallinckrodt here because I'll talk about them more on the next page. So pending right now, I'd hope to have some more information when we launched for this, but finalizing these settlements has taken a little longer than anticipated. So if you see all of each logo here represents another settlement that we anticipate coming through. Kroger is fairly recently announced. I don't know if that's going to come through this fiscal year, but Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Endo, Allergan, and Teva are all potentially coming through this fiscal year. So this sheet that I was just showing you is going to get updated, and through our listserv, we will send out up when it has been each time we get a new one, because not only will it affect your direct money, but it'll affect the individual money and the gold standard money you're eligible to receive. All in all, we would anticipate what you see here over the life of the settlements to potentially double as all those settlements are finalized. So what you see now is not the end all of what you're going to have. So I want people to keep that in mind. I think earlier this year, keep saying last year, it's still the same year from when we first launched this process. Feels like 3 or 4 years ago. We didn't do a good job, I think, of telling that. A lot of people thought this was all they were going to get. And for some localities that are small population, small measure of harm, it's not a lot of money, but you could anticipate that this may double, and a lot of payments may come through this fiscal year, and some of them may all come up front and get front loaded. So.
Charlie, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Someone was wondering if the FY23 individual distributions are still available if they are applying for the first time.
Yes. Thank you. That's a good question. So as of right now, we have set kind of a goal at OAA that we would like to see the FY23 individual distribution and gold standard, if you're a participant, applied for by April 1 of 2025, because we know a lot of cities and counties are very new to this stuff, to these programs and in this space, and want to give time for everyone to make sure they can put this to the best usage. So we hope you apply for it this year, but if not, we'd like to see something by next year. And then we're kind of working on a longer term policy about how much, how long we'll hold money, especially because we know this year may get front loaded with a lot of money. Walmart is expected to pay out in full through 2 payments this fiscal year. It could slip and one could get into next fiscal year, but there could be a lot of money that comes up front. So all of these are potentially going to settle out this year or in the next fiscal year. We do have Purdue and Mallinckrodt that are in dealing with bankruptcies. Purdue, I'm sure you're all maybe familiar with, or the kind of start of this. There's a whole big thing around them. And this is we're going to wait for a Supreme Court decision on this one at this point. So I don't expect anything on that until into next fiscal year. Mallinckrodt is coming out of bankruptcy. And what's going to happen is their payments that was initially expected are going to be significantly reduced because they went back into bankruptcy, but in part because of the settlements. And the settlement amount that's coming out nationwide has been significantly reduced. That doesn't really affect anything you see on the sheet because we only have the one payment from Mallinckrodt. We didn't have future years because it was still up in the air as to what they were going to do with it. So what we expect to see is one more payment from Mallinckrodt, and that will be finalized. And in the net of what we were expecting to receive over the course through all settlements, the Kroger was not in that. This is a new announcement that was not in kind of some of our earlier projections. So that, and I believe this more than offsets any loss over here. So we're still net positive on the whole for that. So, all right. Any questions on the individual distribution framework before I go to the grants portal and pull up the application?
Yep, we had a question about can a school organization apply?
Not directly. A school can partner with their city or county, but we cannot give money as a subrecipient, as a partner, as a provider. However, we cannot give money directly to school systems. The only ones that we can give money directly to is cities, counties, and state agencies.
Very good. Francis brought up that Rite Aid announced that they would be filing for bankruptcy in these last few days. Does that affect things moving forward?
Not that I am aware of. I know some Rite Aids are owned by Walgreens, but as far as we understand at the moment, there hasn't been any rumblings about whether or not there's an impact there. I don't know if there's any I'm unaware of any separate litigation against Rite Aid as an individual company. Doesn't mean there's not things going on. I didn't know about Kroger until it popped up. So at the moment, I don't know of any impact. We meet with the Attorney General's office kind of once a month just to touch base on where things are. And we'll check in on that. And as soon as we know something that's able to be made public, we'll be happy to communicate that out.
Great. Those are all the questions we have so far, Charlie.
All right, great. So we'll move over to there are some optional strategies before we get to the application. Apologies. So the OAA's gold standard that I mentioned. So what is that about? So it's an opportunity to increase that individual distribution that's set aside for you by 25%. That was that right column on the first tab we were seeing of how much would be available. What do you have to do that? Well, you have to apply to us to basically be a gold standard city or county. And then you have to take the statutory requirements that I talked about that govern all of our awards and apply that to the money you receive directly, which would be 100% abatement, no prior costs, no supplanting, no indirect costs. So, and let me show you this in a visual way that's probably a little bit easy. So here's our funding chart we saw earlier. So what we want to do is have you treat this money that's governed by the settlements. We're asking you to voluntarily add on the additional requirements that you have to use on the money that comes from us. And we will take that money and we'll increase it by 25%. So if you had $100,000 for this year available to you, and then you agreed to apply the additional standards to the direct distribution here, then we'll give you an extra $25,000 this year. And it's always based on how much money is available to you each year, but it's available through the life of the settlements, and we're funding it from this unrestricted fund here. So it is not affecting your amounts or anybody else's amounts that are available in here, or even for the state agencies. So why are we in part asking you to do that? As I mentioned, we're all in this together as Virginia, right? So if somebody gets off and starts doing a lot of non-abatement work, or a few localities, or even if they think they're doing the right thing and something gets judged as not being non-abatement use, then there's the chance that the settling companies can come back to circuit court in Richmond and petition to reopen the court order. And if they do, the idea is they want to pay less money, which means all of us, the Commonwealth, cities and counties directly, everybody that's getting money from the Opioid Abatement Authority, we're all going to lose money. So we're all kind of in this together. So what we're trying to do is say, if we anything, but by following the gold standard, you're going to be more in compliance with, you're going to have higher standards of compliance than what the settlements themselves contain. And that's the idea behind it. And it pushes everything kind of towards the same bucket. You can kind of treat all your funds the same. You don't have to remember which ones go, need different requirements and stuff. We think in the long run, it makes it a little easier to manage. So.
Charlie, I have a quick question about gold standard.
Sure.
Can we do the gold standard application prior to and outside of any programmatic application?
Yes. So, and that is a change. I should note that's here on this previous slide. So previously, in the previous periods, we had the gold standard had to be done each year. We've removed that requirement. You can do it one time. If you do it this one time, we'll consider you opted in for the life of the settlements. If you want to at some point opt out, you could send us a letter and we could opt you back out. But once you're in, you're kind of in, and we considered you a gold standard city or county. And I will say, of everyone that applied in the last round, we only had one locality that did not opt to be in the gold standard. So seems to be something everyone's doing.
Is there a separate application for gold standard?
There is, and I'll show you that when we get there. So other optional strategies for your individual distribution and or your gold standard funding. So when we get to cooperative partnership projects, which is the multiple localities working together, there's things that, when we're reviewing the applications that give us levels of priority, what we should prioritize over others. And one of the things that we should prioritize over other applications is an application that has a match. It has a financial match to the overall project. And so one of the things that we allow you to do is take the individual distribution and your gold standard and apply that in part or in whole to a cooperative project as matching dollars. If you want to do that, there's a process I'll talk about in the cooperative partnership projects to notate that. You do not need to do an individual application to do that to us, an individual distribution application. That actually would be way more work than you would need to do. If you are doing the gold standard, you would still need to do the gold standard application. But like I said, that can come through off cycle. It doesn't have to come in specifically to be considered at a specific due date. And then another option that we have is, so the money that's available, there's some wonkiness in these first couple of years with these big balloon payments, but it goes down year over year throughout the life of the settlements, the way the settlements are designed. So in future years, there's going to be less money available from the OAA. However, if you want the direct distribution, the money you're getting directly, which is a bigger pot of money, you can create a reserve with that, with the idea that as the money from the OAA falls off in the out years, you can supplement with the money you're holding in your direct distribution. So if you wanted to do that, you need to ensure that any future projects you're using for meet the OAA's terms and conditions. You need to make sure you can separately account for these reserve amounts from any other amounts that you're using out of there. You need to kind of publicly publish the financial strategy for the reserve. And if you're participating as a gold standard locality, those funds would have to be used in accordance with the gold standard. And there's a place to report that and give us information on that in the application. So any questions on the optional strategies? Now I'll be going to grant.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to clarify, if they apply for the gold standard for 2023 last cycle, do they need to do another application to permanently opt in this cycle?
Yes, but you don't have to do a resolution with it this time. Up to you. We don't need it. I know some cities and counties, you have to go in front of your boards, your councils to turn around in a circle, and that's fine. And if you want to get one, you want to include it, that's fine. If you need to do one and you want some language for us to include, we have a sample we can email you. But we don't require it as part of our application process. But yes, once you've done it this one time, you'll be done for the future.
And to clarify, sheriff offices need to partner with their city or county to.
Correct. Correct.
All right, that's all the questions so far.
All right. So here is a screenshot of our grants portal. And I'll take you to there live in just a second. If you notice, there's different tabs over here on the left. I've highlighted, this is the one for new applicants in gold standard. And each one that you click on will get you the information for that particular place. So here we are. Anytime you click in, you're going to start on this top tab. We don't have a way right now to link you directly to a tab. So anytime you come in, you'll have to go and choose the tab you need. But luckily for this, it's the first tab. As you see, we have an introductory letter. It's kind of a general summary, and then the general guidance. I please implore you to read through the guidance. A lot of questions that we got last year, which we're still happy to answer, were definitely contained here. But you're also welcome to email us, and we're happy to help you wherever you need. So we also have our application and project proposal, and then a place for additional project proposals. So you can do one general application for as many projects as you have money available for. And each time you do an addition, you want to add a project, you do an additional project proposal, and then you have to do an additional budget, workbook, timeline workbook, and performance measure workbook to go with it. When you do cooperative partnerships, we talk about that, it has to be a whole package every time because they all have to be considered individually. But as long as you have the money, you can distribute it across as many projects as you want. So here's our application, contact information. Here's the link. So that we talk about the direct distributions. One of the requirements to receive your individual distribution is to tell us about what's going on with your direct distributions. So you can link over to the direct distribution reporting. And this kind of gives you you can choose your city and county, and then the blue fields are where you enter information. And then you just put in the amount of money that you've received across these, or are expected to receive across these fiscal years, in anything that you've allocated, expended, encumbered, anything you're proposing to put towards OAA projects, anything you're planning to hold in a reserve, and then you can see just by the fiscal year based on how the money is received and how you may be planning to allocate it. If you don't have plans for these future years at this point, you don't need to fill those out. You come down to page 2 and you just tell us about what these projects, the names of these projects, how much of this money you've allocated towards it, and kind of just a quick description of it. And that is all you need to do on that. If you did the application last year, there was like a narrative form per an allocation per settlement. We don't really, this is for all of them, the direct distributions together. And here's a link to that lookup tool if you need it for reference too. That's within this form. So, and then that form is also out here on its own as well. So, and then if you want to do the reserve, that's a yes/no option here, and then just kind of utilize this space to describe the methodology and how it's going to be publicly posted. I want to know if you intend to apply for the gold standard. If that's a yes, then there is a separate application. You can see it down here as well. It is a, oh, that's an old, wait, let's see. Let me try that. This may be a good lesson. That's what I do. There it goes. If you have been on our website before and looked at applications and stuff, if you don't see the OAA's new logo at the top of the form, you might need to hit refresh. Because the link may still be the same, and you're as you can see here, I hadn't clicked on that link. The older version of the form came up. So make sure that you've got this at the top, hit refresh, and whatnot. If you run into any problems, just reach out and let us know. So contact information. Here's your agreements about applying. You're going to be designated a gold standard city or county. You're eligible to receive the incentive amount. This is a link to the policy that the board passed that's related to this. A link to our terms and conditions that you also have to agree to. You're going to maintain separate accounting records. You're going to apply the requirements from 2.2 2370 to your direct distributions. and you agree to do the direct distribution reporting book. You don't have to do the direct distribution reporting workbook twice. If you do it through as part of your gold standard submission, you don't need to do it again as part of your individual distribution application. So one pager, pretty quick, and hopefully simplified from previous. So back to application and project proposal. And we get to the signature, and this one signature takes care of all project proposals. Then we have the details for each project proposal. And if you click on the other form here, that's for additional projects, it's literally these same pages just repeated. So, and there's a link to that form here as well. So contact information for the project, if it's different, than the person that's the contact for the application. Is it a new effort? Is it a proposed supplement or enhancement to a project? So you can't supplant, which is saying, hey, we spent $50,000 in general fund on this, and we're going to take that away and put $50,000 of OAA funds in there. That's supplanting. That's not allowed. Definitions of that is in our glossary of terms on our resources page. But you can supplement. So if you've got $50,000 of general fund on a project and you want to add $50,000 of OAA funds and expand that project, fantastic. And you can also enhance and add new parts to it. So then a brief narrative on the project. Anytime you've got a text box here, there's obviously a character limit to it, and it should stop at the end in the size of the box. If you have additional information you can need to include, you can attach additional pages. Just make sure they reference back to the number 5E, to give the full text. Then this is kind of some summary information about the total cost of the project, how much you want out of the individual distribution, how much you want out of the gold standard, and if you're providing any matching funds additionally to it from your direct distribution, your general fund, or an other. It's you just do a yes, no here and put the amount in. And then if you have others, what are the sources and the amounts? Again, you can add additional sheets. There's a budget workbook as well, but this is just a quick summary on the page of the application. So there should obviously, as you note, there should be a match to the budget workbook cells between the two documents. So this is a new question. We're asking for any strategy for long-term sustainability once the OAA funds are reduced or no longer available. If there's not one, if this plans to be sunset, then that's what we would expect to see there. But again, these settlements the longest settlement is for 18 years, and we've got like 16 or so years of that left. And the funding goes down. So longer term, these funds aren't going to be around, and how we're going to keep the program going if that's your plan. Described objectives. I'm going to attach additional sheets. How did you determine that this was the need for the locality, and how does it relate to abatement? Are there any organizations you're partnering with? Their name, the amount of funding, a brief description of their role, and then what kind of entity are they? Again, you can attach additional sheets to describe this stuff if you need to. Is there a specific group of individuals that you're targeting on this project, and how many are expected to see per year? And then, does the project meet any of the following classifications? Is it evidence-based, evidence-informed? Is it credentialed by a state or federal agency? Does it receive any reward recognitions, or is it an organization with an established record of success? If you choose any of these, we'd like to either have a document attached or some type of description, or even a web link. I'm very happy to get a web link to a 100-page document than you attaching a 100-page document. That's much easier for us to manage. We got a lot of heavy paged evidence-based stuff, and that is fantastic that those are the programs that you all are using. However, the link will suffice. Does this project have any components that are not opioid related? We know that some may. One of the things that I mentioned to people, if you think maybe 50% of the people coming in, let's say for a treatment program, are going to have opioid use disorder as a primary diagnosis, and the other 50% may have like stimulant use disorder, then usually programs like that have a prevention program that the stimulant use disorder people would get because they're at risk for opioid use disorder. So if you can couch it to say 50% will receive treatment and 50% will receive prevention, then 100% of your people are receiving some form of abatement, right? That kind of colors the picture a little better. So now we're to our other workbooks. There's a budget workbook, and along with the workbook, we just want a brief narrative about the funding strategy. There's a project timeline workbook and a performance measurement workbook. They're all also linked here outside of the application. So the budget workbook is designed both for new projects and for amendments and renewals. So please pay attention to let's slide this over where it goes, to any notes that we have about what goes in which area, and note our color changes. In blue, you key it on this tab. If it is green, you key it on your renewal. There's a tab for personnel details and a tab for operating and for capital. And then, so those will feed back to our green cells here in the expenditures. And then if you are doing a new project or you're doing an amendment to the project, you key those in the yellow fields on these tabs, and that will populate the yellow fields here. And eventually what that will do is drop you down to the total requested amount for the OAA. We would only be approving awards for 24 and 25, but if you have out year expectations for these projects that you want to put in so we can see where you're going, you're welcome to do that. But you at least have to put the money in that you're requesting for the year that you are requesting. There's also a spot for carryover that you could put on a new project if you anticipate that something may happen late that could end up into the next year, and then that will carry over, whether it's a carryover for an amendment or it might be a carryover for amending the current project or for a new project. That's the budget workbook. Project timeline workbook is literally just like, what are your objectives and when do you expect to hit those? Choose your city and county name, enter your project name. We have up to 8 projects in here that you could do. For each project you do, you need to do a timeline, you need to do a budget workbook. And then also we require performance measures to go along with each award. You have options. So the first page here is a summary where you just choose your city and county, and then that populates going the rest of the across, and you enter your project name. And then you look, we have them grouped by type. You got prevention, education, stuff directed towards pregnant and nursing women, children, individuals with injustice involved in those types of things. So we're just looking for the number of people that you would expect to see participate in your programs that fit into these categories. If you got any questions, we're happy to help you work through that as to what makes sense. That needs to come along with each application as well. And then optionally, you may attach any letters of support or articles or other information that may assist the board in making a decision. So, questions on the individual distribution application?
We have a few.
I bet.
Should you update the project application form to incorporate an option to indicate that a locality has already applied for the gold standard designation?
Since the fact that you have to, even if you have already applied once, you have to apply again for this kind of final time, then we would just want to see you check yes that you plan to do it in it, because you would still need that application. For future years, absolutely. I think we would put that, and hopefully that will be something in our system that will already just be there. That it will be a question you don't even have to answer, that if you have applied, you will just show up as a gold standard locality. Or if you are not, then you would have the option to go through that process.
Okay. Regarding the terms and conditions, is the version that is current for this current application cycle different from the terms and conditions from last spring's cycle?
Not really, other than some layout changes. And if we did a small update, we launched on January 19th, and then we did a small update to better define like direct and indirect cost and what is allowable administrative cost. And those were done as like a revision. That revision has been incorporated as just prima facie on this version, but otherwise there have been no like major changes or anything.
Okay. So here's the last question we have so far. Does each locality have one login to the grants portal, or can multiple people have a login for the same locality?
There is no login at this time. This is just on our public website, and you can just get there and download the information. When we get further along in our process for developing our actual system where you would have logins to apply, we'll let you know what that looks like. But we're way too early on that. Everything is just grab the forms, download them, fill them out, get them signed, and send them in as through an email. And I should also note, here. Also on this tab down here, as you see, there's the terms and conditions, and there's a checklist here as well that helps you look through and make sure that you've got the things that you need to do, that you can review as you're getting towards finishing submitting something, so that you have the opportunity to make sure, and you can leave any notes and send this with us if there's something that, you know, maybe you've got in a status that you're almost done or something like that, or something something else you want to communicate to us. You can put that in here.
For the individual share, the questionnaire understands that they will receive the FY24 amount in one lump sum upon OAA approval. If they do not spend all of the funds in FY24, do they need to submit a carryover request to the Opioid Abatement Authority?
So for individual distribution, carryover is automatic from FY24 to 25. It's kind of a no questions asked. For future years, then yes, it would be basically even once you get an award, you have to go through a renewal process each year, and you can renew and or amend. So it would be part of that process, where you would say, hey, we need to amend the next year because we've got $15,000 for a procurement that hasn't been completed. We need to carry over because it's going to happen in that year, that type of thing. So, but for this first year, if you get FY24 awards during the cycle, you carry over automatic for that.
Okay, so that's all the questions we have at this time.
All right. Cooperative projects, cooperative partnership projects. So the difference here, individual distribution, that distribution is allocated for each city and county per the settlement MOU. The OAA reserves these funds. The funding will be distributed as long as the requirements are met and maintained. Awards can be made in FY24 and FY25. And you can do multiple projects in one application. For a cooperative partnership, all applicants have to compete for a limited amount of funding. Awards made according to the board's discretion, but we also have to consider the funding has to be distributed in an equitable manner across the Commonwealth, across those 5 DBHDS regions. Awards for this are only available for FY25. Even current awards that want to amend cannot ask for more cooperative funds in the current year. So there's no rush to get a cooperative application in, before those first 2 grants committee meetings, because we're not going to be able to consider them until after April 1st. So if you want to submit multiple projects as a cooperative partnership, you have to do multiple applications. So same application period, same subsequent application period. Here are your deadlines. This is just a snippet of the other chart you saw. This is also in the guidance document. If you want a draft review, you have to be to us by March 15th. The applications are all due by April 1st, and then they'll be considered at the May 23rd grants committee meeting. And then awards would not be transmitted. We'll have the award process that'll start after that, but awards would not be transmitted until July. So each performance period for these are 1 year at a time. We'll be making these awards on a single year basis. You can request up, kind of show us an application of up to 5 years. So we would consider those optional renewals. But the renewals are are also discretionary, though we would not try to leave you in a position where, you're holding a bag with no money in a year two type of situation. We try to take as much as we can into consideration of the out years. So you must stay in compliance with our terms and conditions to renew. After the 4 renewals, you'll need to go back and go through a full application process that's be fully considered. Again, awards will be for FY25. Any carryover for cooperative projects, you need the OAA approval, or it has to be repaid. Again, that process will be part of an amendment renewal process. So another thing you have to do differently is we need a cooperative agreement. We have a template for that. I'll show you when we go back to the grants portal for this section. It is for the purposes of applying funds. So it says these localities, these cities and counties are coming together to apply for this project. And here's how much money we're putting in. Here's how much money we're requesting. And it just kind of gives us something official that says everybody has signed off and has agreed to go down this path. Again, at least 2 of the participating cities and counties have to be from the same DBHDS region. We have a list by region available on our website. One of the cities or counties must be designated as fiscal agent. The fiscal agent is responsible for applying, receiving, managing, distributing the funds, and monitoring and reporting on performance measures and all financial stuff. So we're not, if we got 5 cities and counties, we're talking to the fiscal agent. We're not talking to each one of you. You guys can work that out, how that needs to go, how you want to make it work. But we're talking to the fiscal agent. So we have a staff of 7. That's it. That's our whole agency. So I can't call 5 or 6 localities about one single project. I don't have the bandwidth. So must have separate accounting. So the fiscal agents got to keep their OAA individual distribution, their settlement direct distribution, and anything they're holding for a cooperative partnership has all got to be able to be shown separately. And then the agreement must note any city or county that's pledging matching funds to the project, like by source. So is it coming from the individual distribution, the gold standard, the direct distribution, other grants, general funds, a donation on behalf of the city or county, which is also allowed. And I'll show you the agreement that's kind of templated in there. And that also needs to reconcile with what's going to be in the budget workbook as well. Those need to be shown as revenues coming into the project to support the project, in addition to the cooperative funds the application is requesting. How will we evaluate these? Well, we still have these same Code of Virginia requirements. And additionally, the things that we have to prioritize according to the statute are programs that collaborate with an existing program or organization with a record of success, and one that's established in a community with a high incidence of opioid use disorder or opioid death rate relative to population, established in historically economically disadvantaged community, or includes a monetary match from or on behalf of the applicant with preference giving to a higher match. We do not have a match is not required. A match just improves your chances of being awarded. There is not a prescribed percentage. Obviously, more is better. I've seen as low as 10%. I've seen as high as like 55%. Everything kind of ranges within there. Some of it has to do with the amount of resources that are available versus the cost of the project for the need. Some have done it. They have broken up their match based on how many people are served through the CSB. There's a lot of ways that can be done, but we'll also be looking at these things based on the settlement allowable uses and the OAA's terms and conditions. We'll be looking at projects that identify and address specific gaps. They help remove barriers. They're focused on pregnant and nursing mothers, and or what their prospective return on financial investment. And what we mean when we say about that is kind of like a cost per person and stuff. So like if I've got 2 projects and one of them can get it done, and they're in the same region, and one of them can get it done for $100 a person, and one of them's going to get it done for $1,000 a person, I'm probably going to look at prioritizing the one for $100 per person, assuming that they are giving me like outcomes. And now that's not an end-all be-all. Some programs just cost a lot per person. Housing costs a lot per person. Transportation can, things like that, and we understand that, but it is one of the things that we look at when we're evaluating things. So, as I mentioned before, you have options for combining your settlement funds into the cooperative Partnership project. And this graphic is also available on our resources page. So you're a city or county and you have these non-competitive funds. You have your direct distributions, your individual distributions, and your OAA gold standard incentive money, if you opt to that. All of this, 1, 2, 3, however you want to combine it in pieces and parts or in whole, can be used as a cash match towards the cooperative partnership. And again, you can bring in other grants, general funds, or a donation made from a philanthropic organization on behalf. So we even had one where the CSB gave money as a match for the project. So then these are just kind of things I've already been over, additional, kind of summary information on the different buckets of funds. Our decision process, as I mentioned, no decision should be made until after April 1st. The staff will get and review, and we'll work with you to make sure we get anything we need clarified, questions answered, and then we'll present the applications with recommendations to the grants committee. We'll make decisions. There's no appeal process here, as these are discretionary grants because they're competitive. And as I mentioned before, the distributions have to be applied equitably across the DBHDS regions. So questions on the framework for the cooperative partnership projects?
Yes. So to confirm, a cooperative agreement could not be between a county and a town.
No. A town could be kind of like a partner or a subrecipient, but we can't give funds. A town would not meet the qualification. It has to be a city or a county that we could give a grant to. But if you wanted to sub out some of the work to a town for them to do it, then they could be one of those partner organizations that's in the application. That is kind of like if you contracted with your CSB to do a project, you kind of treat them the same way.
Can you submit more than one cooperative proposal? Would they be separate applications or can they be placed under one application?
You can submit them. They need to be separate. They'll all be looked at against each other. And what we did have a couple of partnerships that did submit it and were awarded multiple projects. But yeah, everything's got to come in as its own full package for cooperative partnerships.
Someone pointed out, is the date of the decision process April 1st, 2024? Because the presentation says 2023.
Oh, that's an error. Thanks for catching that. I'll fix that before I post these and send them out. Yes, it is. Apologies for that. Yes, so we won't make decisions until after April 1, 2024. That's when we'll start reviewing the applications once they've come in, and we'll be working throughout April and into May with you all to do that. So, and then the decisions will ultimately be made by the grants committee. I believe that's on May 23rd. But yes, 2024.
Charlie, will we be making this presentation available and downloadable?
Yes, I'll fix that date issue, and then Jennifer, I'll send you a PDF, and then when we get the video ready, we'll post both the video and the slide deck to our website, and then I'll make sure you'll get emails from Jennifer when it's available through their side, and I'll send out a news update through our listserv.
Yeah, if you registered for this presentation, I'll automatically send that to you. Mm-hmm. Another question, is the carryover automatic for cooperative projects too? No, it only was for if they applied last year and got an award in 24, they can have an automatic carryover for 25. But subsequently, no, the carryover has to be requested. But it still, would be assessed on those same kind of things. Like if it's just something that's part of your project and it's a timing issue, then we're happy to, that will likely kind of get approved. Or if it's something that you want to do, maybe do something one time with in the next year, and it's specifically still related to that project, those types of things likely to be approved. So. Okay, those are all the questions we have at this time.
All right, keeping going. So another screenshot from the grants portal. If you see now, I've selected cooperative partnerships for new applications. Back we go. We are. So again, introductory letter, general guidance. Please do read through that. Those will answer, I think, a lot of questions. So you have your application and project proposal, budget workbook, Project timeline workbook, performance measure workbook. They all look very similar to what you saw before. Budget workbook's a little different. I'll go over that. So here's your sample cooperative partnership agreement for applications. Here's our DBHDS regions link. You can see by region and then by CSB, and then the names of the cities and counties are listed below that. And then if you are putting, the terms and conditions are here. Again, the same applies to this terms and conditions at the individual distribution. We incorporated that update from that revision in February 1st on the face of the agreement, and a little formatting reorganization, but otherwise everything's substantially the same. Here's the gold standard application. If you're just focusing on a cooperative and you want to push all your money over there and including your gold standard, you still need to do that. So we left it over here. Here's the checklist. And also, if you want to look a little further forward as you're working with your partner cities and counties, if you get approved for a cooperative partnership project, you'll then need to create an operational agreement, which is basically the more the nuts and bolts and legal mishigash of how you're going to actually execute this whole process, get it implemented and manage it, what the responsibility of the fiscal agent is versus each partner. So this is an example, and then there's an exhibit for the budget that goes along with it. You're welcome to take a look at that. These are not requirements for the application. That's why they sit down here. That's why it says for awarded projects. But it's something you can look into if you want to. It doesn't have to be, if that is something you want to do, it doesn't have to be word for word the way it is. This is just kind of, we kind of de-identified this from one of the groups of localities that was working on one. But you do have to do this sample cooperative partnership. So I'll show you that. It's kind of written as a resolution, but again, it does not require, we do not require action by your boards. It just needs to be signed off on by someone with signatory authority, just like the rest of your applications. It just says you're working together to apply for these things. So, and then it names your fiscal agent and the amount that you are seeking and funding from us. And then it lays out your matching funds, which city and county, and then is it coming from your direct, your individual, your gold standard, or other funds, and what's that total, if you're doing multiple, what's that total matched pledged? You just list your cities and counties there, and then therefore be it resolved, and then use, name of the city or county, who the printed name of the person that's signing their the title and their signature. And you can make some adjustments to this if you need to. If you got questions, feel free to reach out to us. But if we don't have this, we don't consider it a completed application, because we're expecting the application to be completed by the fiscal agent. And this is one of the things that kind of tells us, yes, everybody's come to an agreement as to how this is going to move forward. So your application is going to look fairly similar to the other one, other than you start off by obviously naming the cities and counties, their contact people that are participating, then who is the fiscal agent and their contact person. And then here is where we talk about the cooperative agreement, and then how you're, is there any allocation in the of matching funds? And then just a note that you have to do the operational agreement if you are selected. That will be a requirement that has to be completed before we'll transmit funds. And signature, name and title. This would be from someone with signature authority for the fiscal agent. Now you do the project proposal. Again, that's going to look very similar to what we had before. Your new supplement or combination, narrative, and include the one difference here is just if you're thinking about multiple years, how many years you're thinking about, strategy for long-term sustainability, total cost of the project, reference over to the budget workbook. It is a different workbook for cooperative partnerships versus individual distributions. Total amount of cooperative funds, and then here's your total match. This is again more summary level of the budget details. It may seem like between these applications and agreements and budget forms that I'm maybe beating the numbers a little hard. I am on purpose, because we had issues we found out very late in the game where things were coming in and the localities that were submitting didn't quite fully understand what they had and what buckets they had it and how they were applying it. Some asked for more money than they had, some asked for much less, or they asked for it from the wrong bucket. And some of these things didn't get caught till after it had already been through the grants committee. So I'm trying to use this as a tool to make sure that all these documents align and everybody's in agreement that this is the money that's coming from these sources. So you get questions, we're happy to help you figure that out and make sure that you got it. It's why we also have that option for you to send a draft in ahead of time, gives us a chance to work through this. So what's the source of the match? And again, this is just match in total, not by locality. You have what are the other sources? How does the need relate to abatement? Partnering organizations, these are all, who's the same as the other application. Does it meet any of those? Other than abatement, you got your budget workbook, which again, the main differences is any direct distributions, individual distributions need to be, and the additional funds that are coming as a match need to be laid out as revenues in the workbook. There's a space for that. Again, a narrative for the funding strategy, timeline workbook, performance measure workbook, and then any additional materials that you think may help. Go ahead and look at the budget workbook. And you choose the city and county that's the fiscal agent. And then you choose, is this again, this is being used for new as well as amendments. So again, here you go. So you would choose a city or county that is applying direct distributions. And then you would put, since this is a new project, you'd put the proposed amount for a new project here. For each city and county that's doing that, same thing. If you're doing individual distribution and gold standard, you can combine those amounts for this purpose here because they'll be laid out in other places with the details. And then if you have other ones, I didn't clear this out, federal grant, some people are using grants. You enter the source of the revenue. Is it, general funds? Is it from, a philanthropic organization or something like that? And then where you want the money again, just like the other one, where you see blue, you key it on this tab. When you see green, it goes on the two renewal tabs. When you see yellow, it comes from the two new and amend tabs. So for this audience, it'd be primarily using the new and amend tabs. So, and then again, these are for feeding the expenses. It rolls them here. And then that, there's the option for carryover if you think you potentially have it. And then the amount of the total ask. And then this would be the amount that's coming cooperative and the amount of total, individual distribution or gold standard that would be coming in as matching dollars. Again, please pay attention to our notes here as well. I know there's a lot of information here. We're happy to help if there's any need. And quickly, I will go back so that you can see the timeline is the same as it was in the other one. It's just one tab because you have to submit one with each application. Same thing for the performance measures. It's just one tab. You choose your city or county, your project name, and it's the same performance measures. And also the same performance measures as it was in the previous cycle. There have been no changes there. I do want to show you one other thing on the grants portal here, our resources and general information. Here's our glossary of terms. There's an overview of the OAA that links to another part of our website. We're working on updating our frequently asked questions. There's some key provisions here from the OAG for managing settlement funds, as well as guidance from the APA that was updated recently in September. Here's your lookup tool. Here's the graphic for combining funds, gold standard policy. So this is from two of the settlements. Exhibit E, this is a list of opioid remediation uses that are different types of programs that are kind of at a high level approved for usage. This comes directly out of the settlements, the allocation memorandum, and then our code that governs all of the work that we do. So, questions on the cooperative projects application? I'm almost done.
Okay. Are matching funds required?
They are not, but we have a limited amount of cooperative funds, and we have a number of awards we made last year that are going to be up for renewal as well. So they certainly increase your chance. The matching funds reduce the overall ask of that competitive limited pool. So, and that we have a smoothing process that we use for those funds. So we have a similar amount available year over year, but just like anything else, it goes down year over year. So any matching funds are going to help increase the chances of approval, or at least a full approval as you may be submitting. So.
Who is determining the gold standard amount for the budget form?
It's however much you want to use up to the amount that you have available that's in that lookup tool.
Okay. If there is a city and a county and both are gold standard, are there incentives for each that can be used as matching?
Yeah. So each city and county has its direct distributions that it gets directly. It's got the allocation for the individual distribution, and then it's got an allocation for the gold standard. And you can put those monies together for an individual project or as a match on a cooperative project, or you can split them up and do some of both. You can't double allocate them. You could allocate them for like a cooperative project, and if it doesn't get approved, then they kind of come back open for you to then do something else with. But you can't ask me for $10,000 here and then the same $10,000 on the other thing. You got to choose one or the other. But yes, each city and county has that. There's money set aside for each city and county for both of those.
Okay, this is an involved question, so
okay.
Ellen, if I mess up, please chime in. Since it is expected that there will be some settlements reaching payment phase in the future, and therefore will be additional dollars in each of the buckets, has the OAA contemplated how it will handle a scenario in which localities have the FY 24-25 individual share applications approved, and then subsequently additional dollars in that bucket are available in FY 24 and or FY 25. For example, and a locality applies for all the individual share available to them for FY 24 and 25. And let's pretend it's $10,000. After getting OAA approval, additional settlements reach payment phase, and the locality has another $5,000 available to it for FY 24-25. Would the locality need to submit another application?
Yes. So if you get something approved, let's say in this current year, the most likely way that this would be able to happen is something gets submitted to us by, I believe it's November 3rd for consideration at the December 4th grants committee, and that gets approved for $10,000. And then something comes in in January, and Walmart, let's say, comes in, and now you've got another $5,000 available in 24, and another, $5,000 over whatever you asked for in 25. You could then go to our amendment renewal process, which is what I'll cover in tomorrow's webinar, and then amend that award for the current year, and then request the additional money for the next year as well. Separately, you could sit on it, and when we open back up in October of 24, you could do an amendment and pull it all forward into that time as well. But yeah, that's the reason that we've kind of set those individual distributions up as like a rolling 2 years, because we know in these first couple of years, you may submit me an application on April 1st, and by October 1st, you've got twice as much money available, and you want to pull some of that down. So boom, you can use the amendment process within the fiscal year to amend your current year to pull down more money to that project.
Well, that's a great tease for having everybody come back for tomorrow's session. So sure. if you need to register for that, give me a second, and I'll put the link in the chat. Yeah. So one of the things that you talked about earlier in the evolution of this was that prevention is aligning perfectly with abatement. In this presentation, however, there has been a distinction made. For instance, as long as a project incorporates 50% abatement and 50% of prevention, it would satisfy the requirement to constitute abatement. Would you please say more about that?
Okay, so one of the questions on the applications is project 100% for opioid abatement. So you can have abatement of lots of different things, but is it specifically for opioid? Because these settlements are focused on opioid abatements. One of the things that's listed in our code is, for a lot of the approved uses, talk about programs, prevention, treatment, recovery, justice involved, all those things, for opioid use disorder and or co-occurring substance use disorders and or co-occurring mental health disorders. Because the General Assembly understands, and we understand, it's just not like a one-size-fits-all, and these projects may help people who that opioid use disorder is not their like primary diagnosis or primary issue. So yes, 100% prevention program is fantastic. 100% treatment program, recovery program, those things are fantastic. What my distinction was is we received some applications last year that went to that question about, they said, no, it's not going to be 100% for opioid use disorder. Our estimated percentage is maybe 30 or 40% of the people we'll see will have opioid use disorder as their primary diagnosis. And then they may have stimulant use disorder. It may be the other, 60 to 70%. Which it makes it seem like the primary use of your program is for stimulant use disorder, not opioid use disorder. Really, we expect the program to be primarily focused on opioid use disorder, whatever level of that intervention is for. But we understand that not everyone you see it's necessarily that's going to be there. Maybe a secondary diagnosis, but anybody that's got a substance use disorder of one type is at risk for another type. So my thing was not a qualification. It was merely a suggestion. Is there's ways that a program kind of rounds itself out so that its primary focus is still towards opioid use disorder, such as if 40% of the people you expect to have opioid use disorder because opioids are harder to get, and what you're now seeing is a rise in stimulant use disorder, which is these are things I have heard directly from service providers and from localities. As long as that 60% that you're using your dollars for in this program that have stimulant use disorder, they're getting they're also, as part of that program, they're getting like a prevention program for opioid use disorder so they don't slip into that, which is a fairly common practice. Then you can kind of say 100% of what you're doing through 40% for directly for opioid use disorder treatment, and then 60% for prevention. It kind of gets you to 100%. It's just a way to paint a better picture. I did not mean that to be a limiting comment on what you could do with it. It's just more that we saw some applications where people were concerned that their focus was too low. And by talking to them and just kind of painting the picture a little different, it is most programs do meet those qualifications of being primarily focused on opioid use disorder.
And I'm sorry, Jennifer, if I could briefly, disabuse the protocols for a moment. I apologize. So a follow-up to that really quickly, Charlie, we're looking at funding or partially funding a prevention and treatment specialist for Gloucester High School. We've got an MOA in place. Now, obviously, we can't really distinguish that balance. I mean, we're looking holistically at prevention, trying to help the kiddos avoid all issues, including opioid use disorder. So is that something going forward that we would be more likely to be able to fund, or would we still need to make that clear distinction between, we're talking 50% of the time, we're talking specifically about avoiding opioid use versus other stimulants?
It's really just more of like a touch base for us, just to make sure we understand where the focus of the program is. In some of it, there's some educational programs that out of the box, they might be 10% opioid use disorder and 90% other stuff. I think we'd have a hard time trying to say you put 100% of your money into something like that. So it's not meant to be limiting, but as long as you have a focus towards opioid use disorder and you're able to make some connections to your performance measures that are around opioid use disorder, then that's fine. I wouldn't expect you to know that you saw 100 kids and 55 were seen for opioid use disorder and 45 were seen for stimulant use disorder. I'm not looking to necessarily get to that level because sometimes they may not know. And depending on what the resource officer is as to whether, what kind of resources are being provided with, and that they can even make that distinction. It's just more about how we're painting a picture and how we're telling the story, that usually it doesn't have to be just sitting in one box of one specific thing. There's usually other things that are going around that are also are related.
Okay, thank you for that clarity.
Mm-hmm. You're on mute, Jennifer.
Of course I am. Those are all the questions we have at this time. I did put in the chat the link to register for tomorrow's session if you wanted to do that, and also a link to the Abatement Academy sessions. They're all on the Opioid Abatement website under Abatement Academy. These are sessions that can tells a story of different things that localities and organizations are doing that you can partner with, and to use those Abatement Academy abatement monies that they're receiving.
Yep. You should see.
Charlie?
Yep, you can see my last slide here. The Abatement Academy that Jennifer just mentioned, our website address. The last thing from the grants portal, I'll just quickly highlight. We did post copies of applications from the last cycle. Obviously, the application forms are a little bit different. However, if you go see applications, supporting documentation, and OAA summary recommendations for cities and counties from the initial grant cycle, here's the cooperative projects and the city and county distributions. And the cooperative projects are even grouped by region. You can see like Albemarle County was able to get two, as the partnership they were working with, got 2 grants. See the application, the budget, performance measures, timelines, evidence-based material, other documents, and then the summary that we prepared and presented to the grants committee for that. So you can see different ways that they didn't have any matching funds in this first year. And if they don't have any matching funds in the next year, that could, be more problematic for them in renewals, who may be looking for them to make some concessions. They don't know that, just it's a potential. Whereas you look at Buena Vista here, you can come down, you can see direct distributions, individual distributions, and some other revenues and how they brought those together versus their personnel expenses and things like that. And like I said, and you can see the applications and what was contained in those and all that type of stuff. So it's a good touch base point for you if you're trying to see how some things fit together or what the details behind a particular project were. If you're not on our news updates email list, if you go to our website, scroll the bottom of the page, you can sign up right there, and then my contact info is there, and we're here to help. And sorry for going a couple of minutes over, but appreciate everybody's time and attention. And like I said, please do reach out with any questions. We have, we're here to help. And we even have staff down in Southwest Virginia. Cindy Newman is an outreach officer out there that's closer to physically come see some of you all, as she has been doing a lot over the summer and the early fall. So with that, I'll say thanks, Jennifer, and appreciate everybody's time.
All right, great. Thank you everyone for joining us.